Scott Grayson. What's up, Scotty?
Hey, Billy. How you doing this Sunday?
So today it's a bye week. It's a beautiful day out. You get some things done that you wouldn't normally get done because of the weather and the fact that there is no Eagles game today. But today what we're doing, Scotty, we're talking to my advertisers and getting their opinion and their thoughts on the Eagles. But it's always pretty interesting to have a diverse view of what's going on. But pretty upsetting. It lets you down to see a 3-4-1 team that's so banged up. Do you even get pumped up for when the games start?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you look back at the first half of the season here, you got a team that has definitely underperformed. Now, why have they underperformed? I'd say, your quarterback hasn't played to the level everybody expected him to be at. Injuries have certainly taken their toll. But there were still games out there that they could have won despite having all these guys out of the mix. You could knock the coach for some decisions along the way. You could certainly knock, some of the defensive problems earlier in the season. They were letting up way too many touchdowns and not holding opponents to field goals. I think you can point the finger in every direction, and you're not wrong. The question is, what are they doing with this time off now? Because it is only one half of the season, and the second half of the season and anything beyond that potentially is what's going to be defining for the season. People will forget this first half of the year. If you go out and you have a good second half and you get into the playoffs and win a game or two, certainly, what they do here in the second half of the season is going to dictate what they do in the offseason. I think there's definitely a lot to be answered here, a lot of things that need to be figured out. And my question again was, well, how did they use this time? And we'll find out next week. How did they use this bye week? How did Doug use the bye week? Did he self-scout himself and see where he was deficient in some of his decision-making and play calling? Certainly I hope Carson did some self-scouting and saw all these throws and interceptions and turnovers where he could certainly improve and not hurt the team by just holding on to the ball or throwing it away instead of trying to fight for one of those miraculous Sports Center plays. Those are all things that I think these guys need to answer. And if they can come out with the right answers, then perhaps this second half of the season could be something special. But we'll see. I'm not saying I'm believing that's going to be the case. I'm just saying there's that potential.
And of course, Scott, you look at this. You look at the schedule after the Giants in Cleveland. You got Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, and Arizona. That's what 5 games in a row there. It's pretty tough.
They are. And you know what, though? Here's the mentality I think they need to kind of take with them is, if you want to be a playoff team, if you believe you can win this division and that you therefore will get into the playoffs and host a playoff game, these are teams you're going to have to be able to beat. These are games you're going to have to be able to play. They're good measuring stick games. So come out of this bye, get yourself past the Giants, get yourself past Cleveland. Suddenly you're in a much more comfortable position, and let's go take on some of these teams and see how you stack up with them again. Look, they didn't play poorly against Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Did they play great? No. Did Nate Gary give up a lot of touchdowns all by himself in Pittsburgh? Yeah, he sure did. But, are there things that they did well in those games? Yeah, they took on some tough teams, and they were there at the end of the game. So, you know what? If you're going to be a playoff team, you got to go out and play playoff teams, and you got to be able to beat some of them. So I think, you know what? I wouldn't look at the schedule as a negative. I would look at the schedule as a positive for these guys to really try to get their level of play up to where it needs to be if you're going to win this division and host a playoff game. They better not make excuses about the teams they're playing because everybody else has to play them too.
I love your positivity, Scotty Grayson. Of course, we're talking with Scotty Grayson from Fox 29 News. You can follow him on Twitter at @SGraysonFox29. Catch him every Monday with Mike Gill for Grayson's Grades on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody. Scott, this team is who do you put more of the blame on for their ineptitude? Obviously, with a lot of injuries, or let's be more specific on Carson Wentz's play. Who is it? You think he's getting the proper coaching out of Press Taylor? I mean, you're not. See, here's another thing. You guys that cover the Eagles are right down in the locker room or at the press conference. You're not there, so you don't really get to see. You get to see it from afar. So we really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it is definitely harder to get a read on the team because you're just not around them in certain circumstances and situations. And, for example, walking into the locker room right after a game, you can feel stuff. You can kind of read body language. We don't get that. We get the Zoom calls that all of you guys see, for press conferences after games and stuff like that. Same thing at the facility. You're not up against the guys or reading body language after practices or during the week leading up to the games. So you can't read that. So it is harder to answer that question of, well, who do you point the finger at? Certainly Carson Wentz deserves to have a finger pointed his way. I think Doug Peterson deserves to have a finger pointed his way. And I think, quite frankly, Howie Roseman needs to have his finger pointed his way. I think all three of them are sitting on a collective hot couch, not just a hot seat. And it's a matter of which one, if this season does not go well, who's got to answer ultimately for the decisions they made or the way that they performed. Look, Carson Wentz has to be better in the second half. There's no doubt about it, because you start asking yourself, do we have the right guy here? And I got to believe through some of the things you hear, the lines you read between the lines when Doug Peterson speaks, the conversation has been had multiple times about getting rid of the ball, living to fight another down, not holding on to it so long. Well, that's leading to fumbles and sacks that are negative plays that are taking your team out of potential first down ability to move the chains and putting them into second and third and really long. It really frustrates the offense. So he can't do that. He's been told that, but yet he's not changing his ways. So I think there's a little bit of a moment that hopefully this week, that's some of what I was talking about, that Carson Wentz reflected, watched film, saw, and noticed, this is what is happening when I do this. And as far as Doug Peterson goes, I think, the way that this team has been coached, the Cincinnati game was called very conservatively, say it that way. And I'm okay with him being aggressive. I like aggressive Doug better than conservative Doug. Let's put it that way. And I can live with some of the mistakes or things that don't happen. Now, that being said, when you're going forward on fourth down all the time and you're not converting, now you're hurting your defense. And the defense is actually starting to play better now. So I'd like to see Doug let the defense help win the game for them. Make the opponent go all the way down the field. Don't give them half a field. If you get to a fourth down and 2 or 3, if it's not there, you don't have that play, punt the ball. Let your defense get you the win. Those are all things that need to be done. And I'm a little, quite frankly, surprised at how he didn't make a move before the trade deadline, just to try to help this team in some way. Now, maybe he did try and wasn't willing to pay the price. That's certainly possible. But I thought for sure they'd have done something.
But, Scott, you just alluded to it. The wrath they're not feeling the wrath of the fans. I mean, that stadium's hit like a tenth full, and so when Carson Wentz keeps making the same mistakes over and over again, he's not getting booed. So he continues to make these same plays. I mean, the Philadelphia fans, Scott, they're not going to put up with it for too long when you continue to make the same mistake over and over again.
Yeah, well, it was interesting that it was asked of Doug Peterson after the last game whether he thought about benching Carson and putting Jalen Hurts out there. Now, of course, Doug gave the right answer, which was no, we're not going there right now. But you know what? That's got to get back to Carson that the question is now being asked. And I certainly hope so. I mean, you want to be able to have
Scotty, did you think that wasn't going to happen when they drafted him in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously there's, the whole season he's had in the back of his mind, why did they take this guy when they did? I'm sure. But you know what? You got to go out and play well enough to say, this is my team, boy, and you better take your spot, which is not going to be taking my job. And right now he's doing everything to say, here, I'm putting it on a silver platter for you. Please come out here and do what I'm not doing. And I like the way Jalen's throwing the ball a little bit. He's quick to leave the pocket. Reminds me a little bit of Mike Vick at times in the way that he just looks to run. And that's what got him through college. But, I don't want to be talking about Jalen Hurts. We shouldn't have to be. Carson Wentz is good enough. He's good enough, and he's shown that he can be good enough. The problem is, I don't think he has any faith in his offensive line. I don't think he has confidence in some of his receivers out there. So he's just trying to do everything himself, and you can't. You can't do that in the NFL.
Tell you, Scotty, he's not getting booed. If he had the fans breathing down his neck and Doug Peterson's making dumb calls, could you imagine how loud those boos would be in the stadium?
There's plenty of times this season when the team came off the field, not just Carson, the whole team. It would have been a shower of boos louder than we've probably heard in a while. But you're right. That aspect of the game isn't there. It's not there. That accountability that you get instantly from the fans that have paid the tickets to get there, it's not there. But maybe it will be as the season goes on if they're allowed to get more fans in. I'm not saying they will, and they probably won't. The 6,000 that are there, I mean, I'm sure they're going to be. I heard some boos in the last game a little bit every now and then.
Yeah, but Scott, it's not the same when there's 78,000 people in that stands and every single one of them are booing.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're right. And that does affect coaches. They'll tell you it doesn't, but it does.
Exactly.
They know ultimately they're accountable to the fans and the owner, and who's the owner accountable to? The fans that are paying the tickets. And if they stop coming and stop using their money at the concession stand and in the stands themselves, That speaks volumes.
All right, Scotty Grayson. Listen, man, I really appreciate you taking time on the bye week to check here in the locker room and give us your perspective. Of course, you can follow Scotty Grayson on Twitter at @SGraysonFox29, and you're on Sports Sunday tonight.